don't think it's gonna let me do it. Let me see. Hmm. Good day, fun people. Today's discussion is, was Johnny Depp entitled to an annulment? And what exactly is an annulment? And how much time in marriage and what state honors annulments? Let's look into it. Okay. What is an annulment? Or annulment versus divorce? Okay, let's look and see. Define annulment marriage. Okay, maybe it'll tell us what states. We're going to look at California. Yeah, there it goes. Annulment forms. And let me share my screen. It used to give me the option. Okay, I'm going to share the screen on this and give you the information. This is in particular, we're going to look at different states, but we're going to go with California because that's where they lived. Okay. That's where she ran to the courts to. So let's look at California annulment and try to get some understanding of this. Okay, first, let's look at what an annulment is. What is an annulment? What exactly is an annulment? An annulment is a legal decree that states that a marriage was never valid. And by this, they mean like if somebody's wanting to marry you for a reason other than love. Let's say a Mexican man comes along, he asks you as a female to marry him, and he's going to making all these promises to you, but you weren't aware that he was actually using you to get his citizenship. He does not have no kind of marriage you hold sacred in your heart. So you thought this man really was interested in you. It turns out he's only using you for one thing, his own objectives. Many people marry people just to use them to benefit themselves. Money wise, many reasons. It can even be a sex addiction this person has. And knowing your boundaries is that you will not marry them, but they don't have the love for you. And you may not know that. They just want one thing from you, to use you for anything that they found available, valuable that you may have. Um, and that would be the only purpose. And so, like they said in this first statement, an annulment is a legal decree that states that a marriage was never valid. It was never true. It was never a real marriage. But you didn't know it at the time. You found out luckily you found out early. You found out less than 2 years, because I think there's a criteria and a limit on filing for annulments. The legal effect of an annulment is to avoid the marriage. Say it's in the void. It's never existed. It was a mistake. Someone had um, alternative motives. They had something, you know, that's detriment to me and my feelings. They didn't have my feelings at best. They just used me and abused me. So this was not a real thing. It was like a hoax, a gag, a joke. And I didn't find out. Luckily, I found out, within the 6 months or more. So marriage as though it never existed, right? Generally, the length of the time married is not a determining factor to request an annulment. Okay, I'm gonna read that. Generally, it says, see, I thought the limit was 2 years. Um, but this we're looking at California. I think where I'm from, we'll look at my state and see what's up with that. Kentucky. But I know that in California, it's saying here that generally the length of time married is not determining factor to request an annulment. Mere regret alone is generally insufficient grounds for an annulment. Laws vary by jurisdiction. So local laws should be consulted for requirements in your area. Like I said, each state is going to have to render a decision on how they go about with granting you the annulment, and how the length of time they allow you to void out the marriage, and all of that. What is the difference between annulment and a divorce? Let's look at that. An annulment differs from divorce in that it addresses defects in a marital relationship occurring at the time of the formation of that relationship. Thus, if a marriage is illegally formed, when it is annulled, the parties regain their legal rights and responsibilities as they existed before the marriage occurred. By contrast, a divorce deals with problems in a marital relationship arising after the marriage is formed. Okay? So, by contrast, a divorce deals with problems in a marital relationship arising after marriage is formed. Okay? So 15 months is not time for a marriage to form. When it is annulled, the parties regain their legal rights and responsibilities as they existed before the marriage occurred. Right. See, so this is better. So an annulment is actually better than the divorce because you don't have like Mr. Santiago who wanted to said married me out for all the wrong reasons. He won't benefit anything from me because he was taking advantage of my good heart and he wanted me to marry him so he can benefit something out of it, right? So I remain safe. He can't use me um for anything when I do the annulment because he goes back to being the way he is and I go back to being the way I am. So we regain our legal rights and responsibilities that existed before the marriage, before I found out that he was just using me, right? So by contrast, if I was to get a divorce, that would probably be some difference. There would probably be some difference. But a divorce is, in my mind, you married a longer time with a divorce. That's in my mind. That's because um I'm like in my state, I think we have to definitely look that up. You have only 2 years is the limit before you can annul. So 10 years, 12 years down the line, your only option is divorce after that. If you don't make your mind up in that 2 years, your only option is divorce. And then this regaining your legal rights and your responsibilities no longer matter. They no longer matter. Okay, that's so this is not necessarily this is just telling us in general about the annulment and the divorce. But I think down here it's going to start talking maybe somewhere it's going to start telling us about the what what's the criteria in California and other states. We can look up that. Okay. So traditionally after a divorce, the parties have continuing legal status as an ex-spouses involving division of property, custody of children, and alimony. Annulments are becoming similar to divorces in that with annulments, courts may now divide marital property, order the payment of spousal support or alimony, or decree nearly anything that would be common upon a decree of divorce, unlike the divorce. However, certain rights or entitlements, such as workers' compensation benefits or alimony from a previous marriage that may have ended up upon marriage, will be started upon annulment because the decree legally makes the marriage non existent. So, with certain rights or entitlements, such as your, okay, Unlike with divorce, however, certain rights and entitlements, such as a workers' compensation benefits or alimony from a previous marriage that may have ended upon marriage, will be restarted upon annulment because the decree legally makes the marriage non existent. An annulment makes your marriage non existent anymore. What are the grounds of an annulment? Grounds for annulments and prohibited marriages are varied. Insanity. If you marry a psychotic and you didn't know you did that, that is definitely grounds for you. Automatically, you can still get a an annulment. You can get an annulment for marrying a psychotic. If you marry somebody for fraud, somebody fraud you into marriage, somebody forces you into marriage, they kidnap you and take you to Las Vegas and you Viva Las Vegas and all over the place. They got you, they're looking like Elvis and they got you hijacked, they got you kidnapped and they're forcing you to marry them. And they drugged you up and they got you married down there in Las Vegas. So they got you marrying Elvis. So that's a forced marriage. Under duress, anything other than love, true love, that is, true love. Anything other than that. It was never real. It was an illusion. It was a hoax. It was a fraud. Polygamy, uh, transsexual, someone sexuality isn't what you thought it was, and they married you only to gain, and they're really something else. Um, Someone's age is not the same, they say here. They lied about their age. Like again, this one says polygamy. Somebody's married to a lot of other people and they didn't tell you, but they married you, and it's a fraudulent. That's fraud as well. Especially if you don't agree with things like this. Uh, they say are all leading grounds for annulment. There are also a few more creative grounds. Colorado, for one, has an annulment provision considering if the act were done as a jest or dare. A couple of states will also make a marriage void or voidable if a party is found to have AIDS or some kind of venereal disease. So there's a lot of protection for you out here. And especially when someone tries to play on your feelings, your emotions, and they're not real, don't think that the first thing through your mind is divorce. No, avoid that out. That never existed. That's a mistake. It was a fraud. It was only to get something, gain something. It says we offer thousands of annulment forms. Some of the forms offered are listed by area below. So let's look at, let me see if it's going to show me, because they didn't really tell me anything too much about the amount of time you can get. You have to get, I need to find out that specific. Or you can do a dissolution of marriage instruction for fun. That's the same as annulment. Uh, okay, annulment definition and meaning according to them: the act of annulling something, the state of being annulled. A judicial or celestial pronouncement declaring a marriage invalid, no longer existing. And they call it an abatement, abolishment, abrogation, avoidance, cancellation, a defeasance, dissolution, invalidation, negation, nullification, quashing, repeal, rescindment, and voiding. In some states, an annulment may be carried out by a court, but annulment is generally practiced by a church, and principally the Roman Catholic Church, which traditionally hasn't permitted divorce. The usual acceptable reason for annulment is to failure to consummate the marriage by having children. Unlike a marriage that ends in divorce, an annulled marriage is considered never to have existed. Other things can be annulled as well, including contract if one party fails to comply with its terms, or an election if it wasn't carried out properly. So that is annulment. So let's look up. Okay, that's annulment. So let's find out how many years. Okay, what's the annulment? How many? What's what's the year limit for an annulment? What is the year limit in California for an annulment? So okay, California law states that you have 4 years to file for an annulment if the reasons are due to physical incapacity, age, or by force. For example, if one partner was under the age of 18 upon entering the marriage or domestic partnership, then they will have 4 years to file annulment. Okay. When is a California? Okay. You may petition for an annulment in California if you meet one of the following grounds: blood relations, if the spouses are related by blood, the marriage will never be considered legal. Bigamy, if a spouse is legally married prior to the second marriage, the marriage will never be considered legal under age. Okay, how long do you have to wait to get? Okay, you can file an annulment at any time in these states, although the sooner you file, the better. Other states, however, have a specific time limit. Like I was saying, in Kentucky, there's a specific time limit. You got 2 years to find out if you've been fraud or you with the psychotic. For example, Colorado requires you to file for annulment within 6 months after you discover duress, fraud, a dare, mental illness, substance abuse, or alcohol abuse. So for an annulment in Colorado requires they're only giving you 6 months after you discover. So luckily you can discover after a year, but after a year you still have, or you can discover after, let's say, 3 years, to be fair. The state of Colorado, okay, let's say it took you 3 years to figure out you were being fraud or that you were married to a psychotic. In the state of Colorado, it took you 3 years. They're still giving you 6 months because you just found out that that person was cray cray or is an alcoholic. So that's pretty good. That's pretty. I wonder what the limits are. This still doesn't tell me anything because, like, from what I'm seeing and I'm thinking, 3 years it takes you to find out all this stuff. Then, after you find out, they're allowing you 6 months to file. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good because you don't want to wait too long on anything like this, though. That's all I know. That's all I know. Because, like, they do have time limits. Okay. And like they said, the state of California, they're saying 4 years to file for an annulment. They're saying that you have 4 years to annul that marriage. If you want to. Okay, marriage annulment laws. It just varies from state to state. So I'm not going to harp too much longer on that. But yes, he was entitled to an annulment in his marriage in the state of California, and very well could have done it anytime, and still is not too late. That's the thing, but it's it's already a divorce situation. But I think legally there's some actions that can be taken, especially after these proceedings and things you have to go through. It's still a possibility because it's been a disgrace. It's been all those good things, all those bad things, I should say. And it's all part of life, of this life, at least. At least they say so, right? So that's the education on annulments. Everyone is entitled to it. As you see, you have your circumstances under which it's honored, various reasons to protect you. And there's always options out there. There's always a way out from a situation, a mistake, or whatever you could find yourself in. There's always a way to save yourself. So, with that said, true love, real peace, and the higher self within the soul. Till next time, peace.